I saved the son of the wealthiest man in the city. In return, he showered my family with a $30 million dowry and brought me into his fold. Living as his wife in the high society world felt like a dream come true. But my sister, Jade, snatched my dowry, squandered it on drugs, and fueled by bitter jealousy, shoved me off a high-rise balcony. She ended up tumbling down with me. When I opened my eyes again, we had both been reborn to the very day the billionaire came to our doorstep. She locked me in my bedroom and shrieked at the mogul through the door. "I am the one who saved your son. Jade, please let me out." I pounded against the door with all my might. "Clara, be a dear and give me this opportunity. Think of all the times I've been a good sister to you." "But the person who saved him was me," I sobbed, tears streaming down my face. "It was pitch black that night, and nobody saw your face clearly. Besides, we look so much alike, if you don't say a word, who would ever know?" Jade leaned against the door, putting on a show of generosity. "I'll give you the entire $30 million in dowry money. That's enough to last you a lifetime." She didn't realize that I had been reborn as well. She still thought I was the same naive girl she could walk all over. $30 million? In my past life, she burned through that entire fortune in less than 2 years. The billionaire's voice boomed from the living room. "Are you willing to marry my son?" "Ido." Jade's voice rang out, trembling with excitement. She looked like she was ready to throw herself at his feet right then and there. "Good." The billionaire nodded, wearing a satisfied grin. He stroked his chin, eyeing Jade from head to toe. "There aren't many rules in my house, but we aren't exactly blessed with many heirs. I'd love it if you could start a family right after the wedding." Jade nodded frantically. "Dad, I love children. I'll give you as many grandchildren as you want. I'll listen to you on everything." The billionaire clapped his hands in delight and immediately presented Jade with several sets of gold jewelry. Jade piled them onto her arms and began spinning around, glowing with greed. I lay back on my bed, propped up on one elbow, and let a cold, mocking smile touch my lips. The billionaire loved children, sure. But his dark secret was that he turned infants into spirits to boost his wealth. And his son was a twisted, sadistic monster. In my past life, I was nearly tortured to death by that man. Jade thought she was marrying into a dynasty, but she was stepping straight into a house of horrors. When my parents heard the news about the wedding, their first reaction was pure anxiety. "You're getting married so fast. Do you think you'll be bullied?" Jade curled her lip, proud as a peacock. "That's Silas Graves, the billionaire Arthur Graves' only son. Marrying him is a blessing most people couldn't earn in 8 lifetimes." My parents were stunned. The billionaire's son. That's a sign that our ancestors are finally looking out for us. They pulled Jade closer, their voices shaking. "How much did they give for the dowry? Is it at least a few million?" Jade sneered, looking down on them for their lack of vision. "A few million? It's $30 million. Mom clutched her heart as if she were about to faint. $30 million. I've never even seen that much money in my life. Jade flicked a glance at me and said lazily, "Don't worry, I gave it all to Clara. If you want any, just ask her." Mom wasn't happy hearing the money was with me. Too embarrassed to say it out loud, she sat on the sofa and started nagging. "Clara, look at this old house. Your father isn't doing well either. I heard from the neighbors that there's a new luxury complex opening up. The location is perfect, and the interior is beautiful. Why don't we use that money to buy a new home?" I curled my lips into a cold, sharp smile. The memories of my past life flooding back. Back then, Jade took the $30 million, and my parents never expected a single cent from her. Instead, they stood by as she wasted it all on hedonism, never once disciplining her. She ended up hanging out with a crowd of degenerate rich kids and became addicted to drugs. Once the money was gone, they drained their retirement savings to pay for her messes. They even came to demand money from me, ignoring the fact that Silas was torturing me into a shell of a person. When I refused, they called me unfilial. I hugged my shoulders, feeling helpless as more tears slid down my cheeks. "Mom, Dad, it's not that I don't want to give it to you. It's just that this money is actually..." Seeing I was about to spill the truth, Jade quickly cut me off. "Mom, are you worried we'll be broke? Once I marry into the Graves family, I'll buy you a mansion. Just consider this a small gift to Clara. After all, we're sisters, and it's only fair she gets to bask in a little of my good fortune." Jade shot me a warning glare. Mom grabbed my arm and sighed. "See how good your sister is? Aren't you going to thank her?" I realized the plan was moving forward and the money was already mine, so I didn't bother arguing. I looked at Jade with a sweet smile and said, "Thank you for your generosity, sister. I hope your marriage is blissful and that you're blessed with children soon." As soon as I escaped the house, I headed straight to the lottery office and the real estate agency. First, I bought a winning ticket that would net me $50 million. Then I snatched up a patch of abandoned land that had been left unfinished by a failed developer. This land would soon be acquired by the government to build the city's landmark skyscraper. The future appreciation would be worth over $1 billion. I put down the $30 million deposit, and with the lottery win, I bought the lot for a bargain $80 million. I also kept an eye on the emerging live streaming e-commerce industry. I planned to launch a company to incubate influencers and sell goods directly to the public. I wasn't as stupid as Jade, blowing cash on useless designer bags and luxury junk. Every cent I spent was an investment, making money work for me. Jade was marrying into a billionaire family, but I was going to become the billionaire family myself. As the wedding approached, Jade spent every day fussing over gowns and diamonds. She plastered photos all over the family group chat, soaking in the envy and flattery. All the distant aunts and cousins came crawling out of the woodwork. I always knew little Jade was born for wealth. Look at the size of that diamond ring. Her fiancé really dotes on her. Jade is so gorgeous, she's a perfect match for the son of the richest man. I knew these people all too well, a total sycophants. In my past life, after I got married, they either begged me for loans or tried to get me to find jobs for their college dropout kids. They were like leeches, impossible to shake off. Jade was completely intoxicated by the praise when she called me, sounding smug. Sister, did you see my ring? I feigned shock, dripping with fake envy. I did. Is that a pink diamond? I've never seen a ring so beautiful. Jade swelled with pride and gave a haughty hum. You grew up in the sticks, of course you've never seen a rare diamond like this. And that's not even the half of it. My wedding is going to be incredibly lavish. You should come so you can see what true wealth looks like. My goodness, that wedding must cost a fortune. I gasped, playing along. Well, of course. My husband told me he wouldn't blink even if he spent $100 million to make me happy. I'm even planning to hire some A-list celebrities for the reception. Sister, don't go saying I stole your chance. Even if you had married into the Graves family, do you really have the luck to enjoy it? I nodded frantically. You're right. I truly don't have that kind of fortune. And besides, you're my sister. It doesn't matter who married him, right? Jade was clearly satisfied with my answer. You've finally learned to talk like a smart girl, Clara. Don't worry, once I'm the lady of the house, you can carry my bags. I'll bring you along to all the high-end parties. I pressed my hand over my mouth, pinching my leg to keep from laughing out loud. I put on a worried tone. They say marriage into a rich family is deep as the ocean, Jade. Please be careful. My good intention was a joke to her. She laughed out loud. Don't worry. My husband adores me. Once I give birth to our child, who could possibly shake my position? Jade hung up, feeling invincible. I stared down at my stomach, lost in thought. The child was the most painful memory of my past life. Silas had done unspeakable things to me, chaining me in the basement, feeding me dog food, and stuffing all sorts of things inside me. But none of that compared to the conversation I overheard between him and his father. They wanted to use the baby to create a cursed spirit. I was 3 months pregnant then, and I made the heart-wrenching choice to tumble down the stairs to let that little life slip away. I wondered if Jade would have such luck this time. On the wedding day, Jade wore a crown and a gorgeous designer gown, standing beside a handsome Silas. They looked exactly like a prince and princess from a fairy tale. With reporters and celebrities everywhere, Jade leaned into Silas, her cheeks flushed. Meeting Silas is the greatest luck of my life. I will be the perfect wife, and I won't let the Graves family down. Silas held her hand, looking into her eyes as he swore. From now on, you are my only wife. Not even death will part us. What a moving performance. In my past life, I was fooled by this exact display. I actually thought I'd found a man who would cherish me. But not long after the ceremony, Silas showed his true hideous face. I clapped from the crowd, while Jade basked in the glory until the very next day. She was rushed to the hospital in an ambulance. When my parents and I visited her, she lay in bed with visible bruises and rope burns all over her arms. I let out a gasp of exaggerated surprise. Jade, what happened to you? Jade coughed awkwardly, turning her head away. I just slipped down the stairs last night. I knew exactly what Silas had done. I just didn't expect him to be so brutal on the very first day. Mom looked around, heart-stricken. Why isn't your husband here? How could he leave you alone in the hospital? Jade panicked, terrified someone would see through her lie. Silas is so busy with work. How could he stay here all day? Look, he even sent me flowers. I knew this trick too well, the old hit then heal routine. Jade just took it as proof of his love. I let out a cold laugh in my heart. Jade waved us off impatiently, begging us to help her sign out. She had a party for elite socialites to attend that afternoon. Mom tried to talk her out of it. You can't. You're still injured. You need to rest for a few days. Jade's brows furrowed. I'm the lady of the house now. I can't miss a socialite gathering. She lifted her chin, shooting me a haughty look. Clara, tell her I'm right. I smiled. Mom just thinks you look a little exhausted and you aren't dressed up. She's worried you'll lose face in front of the others. Jade paused, thinking it made sense, then chuckled again. What's the problem? I'll just go buy some new clothes and jewelry later. I pre-ordered a $2 million necklace. I'm the lady of the house. I can't look poor. I have to match my status. Not just that, I'm going to buy luxury cars, mansions, hire 5-star chefs, and have 8 servants waiting on me. The more she talked, the more excited she got. She was building a fantasy to numb the pain of the abuse she suffered the night before. My parents couldn't stop her, so they followed her on a shopping spree that burned through over $5 million in half a day. That evening, Jade put on heavy makeup and a red dress with heels, heading out to the party. I sighed. Jade had no idea that Silas hated it when his toys went out looking glamorous without his permission. I wondered what state she'd be in when she returned. The socialite party was held at the Grand Regency Hotel's rooftop lounge, an exclusive venue reserved for the city's old money and top-tier celebrities. Jade arrived in a slinky crimson gown, her neck dripping with her newly purchased $2 million diamond necklace. She walked with her head held high, clicking her heels loudly against the marble floor, practically vibrating. With vanity, she immediately gravitated toward a group of heiresses who were sipping champagne by the infinity pool. "Oh, Jade, look at you," one of the women gushed, though her eyes held a spark of thinly veiled disdain. "Marrying the Graves heir really transformed you. Overnight. I heard Silas bought you that necklace?" Jade raised her hand to touch the diamonds, flashing a massive pink diamond ring on her finger. "Of course. Silas adores me. He insisted I get the best pieces. From Cartier. He told me a billionaire's wife shouldn't look modest." She laughed loudly, tossing her hair back, completely unaware that several socialites were exchanging mocking glances behind their fans. To them, Jade was nothing more than an upstart girl from a middle-class family who got lucky. Her loud, boastful demi-honneur screamed de nouveau riche. Just as Jade was enjoying the attention, the heavy glass doors of the lounge swung open. A chilling atmosphere swept over the room. The laughter died down as guests turned to see Silas Graves walking in, flanked by 2 burly bodyguards. He was dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, looking every bit the refined, handsome gentleman. But his dark eyes swept over the room like a predator, hunting for prey. When his gaze landed on Jade, wearing a revealing dress, heavily made up, and surrounded by people, his expression darkened instantly. Jade's heart skipped a beat. Instead of feeling fear, her vanity took over. She thought Silas had come to escort her home like a chivalrous prince. "Silas," she called out sweetly, walking toward him with an arched back. "Did you come to pick me up? You really didn't have to trouble yourself." Slap. The sharp crack echoed across the silent rooftop. The force of the blow knocked Jade sideways. Her heels caught on her dress, and she crashed onto a nearby lounge table, shattering several crystal glasses. Wine and blood mixed across her pale skin. The socialites gasped, backing away in horror. Silas didn't even blink. He stepped forward, grabbed Jade by her styled hair, and pulled her face up to meet his. His smile was smooth, but his eyes were pitch black, devoid of any human warmth. "Did I give you permission to leave the house looking like a whore?" he whispered softly, his voice meant only for her, though the terror radiated through the entire venue. "As Silas." Jade sobbed, clutching her bruised cheek, her vanity shattering into pure panic. I just wanted to represent the Graves family." "You represent what I tell you to represent," Silas murmured, tossing her head back down like a piece of trash. He pulled a white handkerchief from his pocket, casually wiping his fingers as if she had dirted them. He glanced at the horrified crowd and offered a charming, apologetic smile. "My apologies, everyone. My wife is a bit undisciplined. I'll take her home to teach her proper manners." No one dared to say a word. The Graves family held the financial lifeblood of half the people in that room. Silas dragged Jade out by her arm, her heels scraping helplessly against the floor. That night, the lights in the basement of the Graves mansion remained on until dawn. While Jade was experiencing her first true taste of hell, I was standing in the top-floor office of a newly renovated commercial building in the city's tech district. Across from me stood a team of sharp, energetic young professionals. On the glass wall behind them was the logo of my newly established company, Clarity Media. "Ms. Clara," my operations manager, Ethan, reported respectfully, handing me a leather binder. "We've successfully signed the top 12 live streamers in the beauty and lifestyle niches. Using the algorithms you specified, our first mega promotional event brought in $32 million in gross merchandise value last night alone." I scanned the figures, a calm smile touching my lips. "Good. Reinvest 50% of the profits into acquiring supply chain logistics. I want us to own the warehouses, not just rent them." "Understood." Ethan's eyes sparkled with admiration. "When I first hired him, people thought I was crazy for putting a fresh college graduate in charge of a multi-million-dollar company. But I knew from my past life that Ethan would become the king of e-commerce in 3 years. I had simply snatched him up before anyone else realized his worth. My $30 million deposit on the abandoned land had already paid off. Just 2 days ago, the municipal government officially announced the Eastern Gateway project. The city's new financial center and landmark skyscraper were to be built right on the plot I owned. Overnight, the value of that land soared from $80 million to over $400 million. Major banks and real estate titans were calling my phone nonstop, begging to invest or buy shares. I had officially stepped into the upper echelon of the city's business world, not as someone's wife, but as a tycoon in my own right. My phone rang. It was my mother. I answered, placing the phone on speaker while signing a stack of acquisition contracts. Clara, where on earth are you? Mom's voice came screeching through the speaker, laced with anger and anxiety. Your sister is hurt again. Get your butt over to the hospital right now. I paused my pen, my tone cool and detached. Hurt? Didn't she just get out of the hospital yesterday? She fell again. Mom stammered, clearly trying to cover up the truth. Anyway, your father and I are busy taking care of her, and we haven't eaten all day. Bring us some gourmet food from that fancy seafood place downtown. And bring $50,000 in cash. The hospital deposit is running low. I let out a dry laugh. Mom, Jade married a billionaire. Silas's family has endless money. Why are you asking me for cash? You unfilial girl. Mom yelled. Silas is busy running a corporation. How can we bother him with such small matters? You have that $30 million Jade gave you. What's wrong with spending a little on your own family? They still thought I was sitting on that $30 million like a passive piggy bank. They had no idea I had already multiplied it tenfold. I don't have cash, I said flatly. If Jade needs money, tell her to ask her husband. Before she could scream further, I hung up and blacklisted her number for the rest of the day. 3 days later, Jade was discharged from the hospital once again. This time, she didn't dare to wear revealing clothes or bright colors. She wore a high-collared, long-sleeved silk gown that completely covered her neck and arms, despite the summer heat. Heavy foundation caked her face, but it couldn't fully hide the yellowing bruises around her jaw and eyes. To prove to the world that her marriage was still enviable, Jade forced my parents to organize a lavish family dinner at a 3-star Michelin restaurant. She invited every relative who had praised her during the wedding. When I arrived at the private dining room, Jade was already sitting at the head of the table. She was wearing a thick velvet cloak indoors, shivering slightly despite the air conditioning being off. Her hands trembled as she lifted her teacup, her eyes constantly darting toward the door, as if expecting a monster to burst in at any second. Clara, you're finally here, Mom said, shooting me a glare as I sat down. Look at your sister. She's working so hard to maintain the family's honor, while you couldn't even bother to bring her flowers. I glanced at Jade, holding back a dark smile. Sister looks a bit pale. Are you sure you're getting enough rest at the Graves estate? Jade's body went rigid. She gripped her spoon so tightly her knuckles turned white. Of course I am, Jade stammered, forcing a stiff, unnatural smile. Silas loves me very much. He has a very passionate way of showing his affection. High society men are all intense. She was still trying to convince herself that the torture was just intensity. Is that so? I replied smoothly, taking a sip of water. I heard Silas fired all your personal maids yesterday and replaced them with his father's old servants. I hope they're taking good care of you. Jade's face paled even further. Those old servants were actually wardens hired by Arthur Graves to monitor her every move, force-feed her strange herbal concoctions, and prepare her body for pregnancy. Suddenly, the doors of the private room opened. A waiter walked in, bowing respectfully toward me. Ms. Clara, the restaurant manager has prepared the vintage wine you ordered. Also, your executive assistant is waiting downstairs with the contracts for the land transfer. The relatives around the table froze. Assistant? Contracts? A distant aunt asked, her eyes wide with confusion. Clara, aren't you just working a small office job? Mom snorted coldly. What office job? She's just playing around with some small online business. Don't listen to her trying to puff herself up. Before Mom could finish her sentence, 2 men in tailored suits stepped into the room. One of them was the regional director of the city's largest state-owned bank. Walked straight past Jade and my parents, bowing deeply before me. Miss Clara, sorry to interrupt your family dinner, the bank director said, deferentially, holding out a gold-embossed folder. The government's $400 million compensation fund for your Eastern Gateway plot has been cleared. We've set up a private wealth management team for you. Whenever you're ready, we can execute the agreement. $400 million. The entire dining room went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. My parents stared at me with their mouths agape, as if looking at an alien. Jade's eyes nearly bulged out of her head. She gripped the table, her breath coming in ragged gasps. $400 million. Where did you get the Money to buy land in the Eastern Gateway. I wiped my lips with a napkin, looking at Jade with a calm, pitying gaze. Oh, it was simple, I said casually. I used the 30 million deposit you gave me, bought a winning lottery ticket, and purchased that abandoned plot last week. The government just bought it back from me today. I leaned forward, resting my chin on my hands, my voice dripping with sweet venom. I really have to thank you, Jade. If you hadn't insisted on stealing Silas and throwing that 30 million at me to shut me up, I never would have become a billionaire overnight. Jade looked as if she had been struck by lightning. She slammed her hands on the table, pushing herself up, her face contorted with pure rage and jealousy. That's my money, Jade shrieked, her voice cracking into a terrifying pitch. That 30 million was my dowry. The 400 million belongs to me. Give it back to me. She lunged across the table, reaching her manicured nails toward my face. Before she could touch me, the 2 bodyguards I had stationed outside the room stepped in, instantly grabbing Jade's arms and pinning her back into her chair. Let go of me, you servants. Do you know who I am? Jade thrashed like a madwoman, her silk dress tearing at the shoulder, revealing severe, dark purple whip marks across her collarbone. The relatives gasped in horror. My God, look at her shoulder. Those aren't from a fall. Those are whip marks. Is Silas abusing her? Jade realized her dress was torn and quickly pulled her cloak over herself, her face flushed with shame and terror. No, it's not. Don't look at me. Mom and Dad finally snapped out of their shock, but their attention wasn't on Jade's injuries, it was on my $400 million. Mom rushed over to my side, her face completely transformed into a groveling, sycophantic smile. Clara, my sweet daughter. Mom gasped, trying to grab my hand. I knew you were the smartest child in our family. 400 million. Oh Lord, our family is truly blessed. You need to buy us that luxury villa right away. And your father needs a new Mercedes. Dad nodded frantically, his eyes gleaming with greed. Yes, Clara. You're a dutiful daughter. Hand the bank card over to us to manage for you. A young girl. Like you shouldn't be handling so much cash. I stood up slowly, pulling my hand away from Mom's grasp. Manage it for me? I let out a low cold laugh. When Jade took the 30 million, you didn't ask her for a single cent. You let her spend 5 million in half a day on luxury junk. But the moment I make money through my own investments, you want me to hand it over? Mom's face stiffened. That's different. Jade married into wealth, so she needed to show off. You're unmarried. I am the CEO of Clarity Media, I said coldly, adjusting my blazer. And I don't owe any of you a single penny. Just then the restaurant doors opened again. Silas Graves walked in, dressed in a sleek suit, carrying a bouquet of red roses. His eyes instantly swept over the room, landing on me. For a second, a flash of genuine surprise and intense, predatory interest crossed his eyes as he looked at my flawless skin, elegant posture, and the powerful aura surrounding me. In my past life, I was broken, timid, and dressed in rags when he met me. Now I was a radiant, self-made billionaire standing at the height of success. Silas walked over, completely ignoring Jade, who was cowering in her chair. He held out his hand to me, offering a charming smile. You must be Clara. Ava. Heard so much about the brilliant young CEO taking the business world by storm. It's a pleasure. I looked at his outstretched hand, feeling a wave of deep, sickening disgust. But my face remained perfectly calm. I didn't shake his hand. I simply bowed my head slightly. Mr. Graves, you should pay more attention to your wife. She seems quite unstable tonight. Silas's smile didn't fade, but his eyes turned icy as he glanced at Jade. Jade watched the interaction, her body trembling with a horrific mix of jealousy and terror. She saw the way Silas looked at me, with desire and curiosity, while he looked at her like an annoying insect. She realized, with absolute terror, that even though she had stolen my place, she was still losing to me in every imaginable way. A month passed. Clarity Media expanded exponentially, moving its headquarters into the top 5 floors of the city's newest landmark tower. My net worth officially crossed the billion-dollar mark, making me one of the youngest self-made female billionaires in the country's history. Meanwhile, the Graves family was facing severe financial strain behind their glamorous facade. Silas's father, Arthur Graves, had invested heavily in several high-risk offshore energy projects that failed spectacularly. Their liquid capital was almost depleted, and they desperately needed a boost of luck to reverse their fortunes. In the Graves family's twisted belief system, the only way to reset their corporate luck was through the birth of a wealth spirit, a child conceived under specific astrological alignments and sacrificed before its 3rd month in the womb. Arthur Graves set a strict ultimatum for Silas and Jade. Jade must get pregnant within 90 days, or she will be stripped of her title and thrown out. To ensure success, Jade was locked in the master suite of the Graves mansion. Every morning at 6, 2 older female servants would force open her mouth and pour a thick, black, foul-smelling liquid down her throat, a potent fertility brew made from rare, toxic herbs. The herbs caused intense nausea, skin rashes, and severe abdominal cramping, but Jade wasn't allowed to throw it up. If she vomited, they would simply force her to drink another bowl. Every night, Silas would enter the room. There was no affection, no gentle touch. He treated her like livestock in a breeding facility, chaining her ankles to the bedposts, ignoring her tears and screams. When the pain became unbearable, Jade began secretly taking black market pain pills provided by a corrupt butler. She was walking down the exact same path she had forced me onto in my past life, addicted, abused, and rotting from the inside out. One rainy midnight, my private phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered it, setting down my glass of red wine. Static hissed through the speaker, followed by a raspy, hysterical sobbing that sounded barely human. Clara. Clara, please. Jade's voice whimpered through the phone, breathless and terrified. Save me, please, I beg you, save me. I leaned back in my leather chair, looking out at the city skyline. Jade, how did you get a phone? I stole it from the maid. Jade gasped, coughing violently. Clara, they're monsters. They aren't human. They're forcing me to drink poison every day. Silas beats me until I can't walk. They're talking about taking my baby once I get pregnant. She sobbed hysterically, her voice filled with a desperate, pathetic pleading. Clara, we're sisters. I was wrong. I shouldn't have locked you in the room. I shouldn't have stolen your marriage. You can have Silas back. You can have the Graves family. Just come get me out of here. I listened to her cries, feeling no pity at all, only an overwhelming, cold sense of cosmic justice. Jade, I said softly, my voice calm and clear over the receiver. Do you remember the balcony? Jade's sobbing stopped abruptly. What did you say? In our past life, I whispered, leaning closer to the microphone, you pushed me off the 22nd floor balcony because you were jealous of my dowry. You watched me fall, laughing until you lost your balance and fell with me. Jade let out a sharp gasp of terror. You remember? You were reborn, too. I was, I replied smoothly. You thought you were stealing a life of luxury and fortune, but you didn't realize that the nightmare I suffered in my past life was waiting for you all along. No, Clara, please, Jade screamed into the phone. I'm your sister. You can't leave me here to die. I'll tell everyone. I'll tell the police. Tell them what? I laughed softly. That you voluntarily locked me in a room, stole my identity, married a billionaire for his money, and now you don't like how he treats you. Who do you think the police will believe? A self-made billionaire CEO, or a drug-addicted, hysterical wife of the Graves family? Clara, enjoy your marriage, Jade, I said coldly. It's everything you begged for. I hung up the phone, pressed the record button on my computer, and saved the audio file of her confession to an encrypted cloud server. 2 weeks later, Jade's body finally gave in to the fertility treatments. The test returned positive. She was pregnant. Arthur Graves and Silas were ecstatic. They immediately threw a private celebration inside the mansion, burning incense and offering prayers to the dark brass statues hidden within their private shrine. Jade was given 2 days of relative freedom as a reward. Desperate to find a way to escape or find leverage against the Graves family, Jade used a stolen key card to sneak into the locked subterranean wing of the mansion while Silas was out at a business meeting. She crept down the damp stone steps, her heart pounding in her chest. The air grew increasingly cold, carrying a metallic, sickly sweet scent that made her stomach churn. She reached the end of the corridor and pushed open a heavy iron door. Inside was a dimly lit room lined with glass display cases. When Jade's eyes adjusted to the dim red light, her breath caught in her throat, and she let out a silent, horrified scream. Inside the glass jars filled with preserving liquid were small, undeveloped fetuses, each labeled with a date and an astrological sign. In the center of the room stood a black marble altar surrounded by dried blood, strange runes, and photographs of Arthur Graves standing beside powerful politicians and business tycoons. On the desk lay an open leather journal. Jade stumbled forward, her hands shaking uncontrollably as she flipped through the pages. The journal detailed 30 years of the Graves family's dark history. Every major financial breakthrough Arthur Graves had achieved was tied to a date recorded in the book, the exact day a wealth spirit was harvested from one of Silas's pregnant wives or concubines. On the very last page, written in fresh black ink, was her own name, Jade Lee. Conception date, August 12th. Harvest date, October 24th. Target, fortune, Acquisition of Clarity Media and the Eastern Gateway Project. Jade dropped the journal, her legs giving out completely. She fell onto the cold stone floor, clutching her stomach, her mind shattering into pure, unadulterated horror. They didn't just want a baby. They were going to murder her and her unborn child in less than 2 months to take my company and my land. No. No. No, no, no. Jade whimpered, tears streaming down her face as she scrambled backward on her hands and knees. Suddenly, a cold voice echoed from the doorway behind her. Finding what you were looking for, my dear? Jade whipped her head around. Silas stood in the doorway, holding a brass flashlight, his shadow stretching across the blood-stained altar like a demon from hell. Behind him stood Arthur Graves, leaning on a gold-headed cane looking at Jade with cold, lifeless eyes. Silas, please, Jade sobbed, pressing her back against the glass display cases. I won't tell anyone. I swear. I'll be good. Just let me have the baby. Don't kill us. Silas stepped forward, crouching down in front of her, gently brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Oh, Jade, Silas whispered with a terrifying, tender smile. You should have just stayed in your room and enjoyed the fine food. Why did you have to be so curious? He nodded to the 2 heavy guards behind him. Lock her in the cellar. Keep her fed, keep her healthy. Make sure the baby reaches the 8th week intact. Jade screamed and fought, biting and scratching as the guards dragged her into a reinforced iron cell at the back of the subterranean wing. The heavy steel door slammed shut, locking her into absolute, suffocating darkness. While Jade was trapped in the subterranean cell, my parents were enjoying their new lifestyle in a luxurious apartment I had leased under my company's name. A decoy to keep them quiet and out of my way. They had no idea Jade was locked in a basement. Every time they called the Graves estate asking to speak with Jade, the butler would answer smoothly. The young lady is experiencing severe morning sickness and needs absolute rest. Mr. Silas has sent her to a private retreat in the mountains to recover. My parents were thrilled. Look at how much Silas cares for her. Mom bragged to our relatives over the phone. He sent her to a mountain retreat just for morning sickness. Our Jade is truly living like an empress. Meanwhile, my corporate assault on Graves' enterprise reached its final phase. Over the past 3 months, I had used my vast liquid capital to quietly acquire 60% of Graves' enterprise's short-term debt from various private lenders. At the same time, I partnered with the city's chief financial prosecutor, providing him with a massive dossier of evidence detailing Arthur Graves' 30 years of tax evasion, money laundering, and illegal offshore banking. On a bright Monday morning, I initiated the margin call. Clarity Capital formally demanded immediate repayment of $350 million in outstanding debt from Graves' enterprise. If they couldn't pay within 48 hours, I had the legal right to seize all their corporate assets, real estate, and subsidiary shares. Inside the executive boardroom of Graves' enterprise, Arthur Graves slammed his cane against the mahogany table, his face flushed purple with rage. How is this possible? Arthur roared at his financial team. Who is Clarity Capital? How did a newly formed investment firm buy up all our debt without us knowing? His CFO stood trembling by the screen. Chairman, Clarity Capital is a subsidiary of Clarity Media. The sole owner is Clara Lee. Arthur's breath hitched. He fell back into his leather chair, his eyes wide with shock. Clara Lee. That girl. Jade's sister. Silas, who was sitting nearby, narrowed his eyes, a dark, dangerous spark flaring in his chest. Father, Silas said coldly, standing up and adjusting his cufflinks. Leave this to me. Clara thinks she can play games with us just because she has some money. She forgets that in this city, money without power is just an invitation for slaughter. He pulled a dark velvet pouch from his pocket, the same dark talisman his family used to curse their enemies. I'll pay a visit to her office tonight, Silas sneered. She'll sign over her company, her land, and her life before sunrise. At 9 o'clock that evening, the top floor of the Clarity Media skyscraper was quiet. The staff had gone home, leaving only the soft glow of the floor-to-ceiling windows illuminating my private office. I sat behind my desk, sipping a glass of warm tea, looking out at the glittering lights of the city below. The elevator chimed. Silas Graves walked out, flanked by 4 dark-suited men carrying silenced handguns. He didn't bother knocking. He pushed open my office door, a smooth, confident smile playing on his lips as he stepped inside. Clara, Silas said softly, walking toward my desk with slow, deliberate steps. You really surprised me. From a penniless girl to a billionaire CEO in less than half a year. Impressive. I didn't reach for a panic button. I didn't look afraid. I simply set my teacup down, looking at him with cool indifference. Mr. Graves, I replied smoothly, breaking into a corporate headquarters with Armed men. Is this how the Graves family handles debt negotiations? Silas chuckled, pulling out a chair and sitting down across from me, crossing his legs casually. Debt negotiations? Silas sneered. Clara, you're smart, but you're naive. Do you really think a piece of paper gives you power over my family? In this city, people disappear every day. An unfortunate accident, a fire, a fall from a high-rise. He gestured to his men, who stepped forward, aiming their weapons directly at my head. Silas pulled a thick stack of asset transfer agreements from his coat, tossing them onto my desk. Sign everything over to Graves Enterprise, Silas ordered, leaning forward, his eyes burning with dark malice. Do it now, and I might just keep you as my secondary concubine. Refuse. And you'll join your sister in the cellar. I looked at the transfer agreements, then raised my eyes to meet his. A low, quiet laugh escaped my lips. The cellar. I whispered softly. You mean the subterranean wing with the glass jars and the black marble altar? Silas's smile froze instantly. His eyes contracted into tiny pinpricks. What? What did you say? I know about the wealth spirits, Silas, I said, leaning back in my chair, resting my hands comfortably on the armrests. I know about the 30 years of sacrifices. I know about the unborn fetuses in the liquid. And I know that your family's current luck ran out the moment you touched my sister. Silas leaped out of his chair, pulling a gun from his coat and pressing the cold steel barrel directly against my forehead. Who told you? Silas roared, his handsome face twisting into a grotesque, terrifying mask. Did Jade tell you? How do you know about the altar? I didn't need Jade to tell me, I whispered, looking directly into his murderous eyes without a single flinch. I've known since the day I died in my past life. Before Silas could digest my words, the heavy glass walls of my office shattered. Inward. Boom. Stun grenades exploded across the office floor, blinding Silas's men in a flash of white light and deafening noise. Tactical police officers from the Federal Special Operations Division burst through the windows and the side doors, their laser sights pinning Silas and his bodyguards to the spot within seconds. Federal police. Drop your weapons. Hands on your head. Don't move. Silas was slammed onto my desk, his gun knocked from his hand, his face pressed hard against the glass surface. Clara Lee, Silas screamed, struggling against the heavy titanium handcuffs being locked around his wrists. You set me up. You can't do this. My father owns the city council. I stood up slowly, stepping around the desk, looking down at him with an expression of absolute, unyielding coldness. Your father was arrested 20 minutes ago at his mansion. A senior federal prosecutor stepped into the room, holding a tablet displaying live security feeds. A joint task force raided the Graves estate an hour ago. They found the subterranean altar, the human remains, the financial ledgers, and rescued your pregnant wife from the cellar. Silas's face drained of all color. He collapsed against the desk like a puppet, with its strings cut. No, it's impossible. Silas stammered, tears of sheer panic finally leaking from his eyes. The spirits were supposed to protect us. The spirits didn't protect you, Silas, I whispered into his ear as the officers dragged him up. Because the person who brought your family down was the one who escaped your hell. As the police led Silas away in chains, the federal prosecutor turned to me, offering a respectful handshake. Ms. Clara, thank you for providing the encrypted audio files, the financial logs, and the satellite coordinates of their offshore accounts. Without your help, this dark syndicate would have continued operating for years. I was just doing my duty as a citizen, I smiled gently, shaking his hand. By midnight, news of the Graves family's arrest broke across every national and international news network. The media exposed everything. The 30 years of murder, domestic abuse, human trafficking, occult rituals, and massive financial fraud. The Graves enterprise stock collapsed to zero within minutes, declaring bankruptcy before dawn. Every asset owned by Arthur and Silas Graves was seized by the federal government to pay for victim restitution and court fines. The powerful, terrifying Graves dynasty was completely erased overnight. 2 days later, I visited the city's Central Police Hospital. Jade lay in a private, guarded room on the psychiatric ward. She had suffered a severe miscarriage due to the trauma, toxic herbs, and stress she had endured in the cellar. Her health was completely ruined. Her skin was sallow and covered in scars, her hair thin and brittle, her body frail like an old woman's. Because she was listed as an accomplice in several of Silas's financial fraud schemes, having signed multiple fake invoices during her spending sprees, she was facing up to 8 years in state prison once she recovered. When I stepped into the room, Jade was sitting on the bed, staring blankly out the window. When she heard my heels, she turned her head slowly. When she saw me, dressed in an elegant cream suit, looking radiant, healthy, and powerful. A wave of deep, agonizing sorrow and hatred flickered in her hollow eyes. Clara, Jade rasped out, her voice thin and broken. You won. Everything. I stood at the foot of her bed, looking at her without anger or pity. I didn't win anything, Jade. I simply lived my life. You were the one who insisted on taking my path. Jade burst into hysterical tears, clutching her hollow stomach, weeping until she choked on her own breath. I didn't know, Jade sobbed. I thought being a billionaire's wife meant endless money, diamonds, and luxury. I didn't know he was a monster. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me marry him? I let out a low, dry laugh. Tell you? I asked quietly. Jade, when Silas's father came to our house with $30 million, you locked me in my room, screamed through the door that you were the savior, and demanded the marriage for yourself. Even if I had told you the truth, would you have believed me? Or would you have claimed I was trying to stop you from becoming rich? Jade froze. Her mouth opened, but not a single word came out. She knew I was right. Her greed and vanity were so consuming that if I had warned her, she would have simply thought I was trying to keep the billionaire for myself. She had walked into the house of horrors with her eyes wide open, driven entirely by her own malicious envy. Just then the door pushed open. My parents rushed into the room, looking haggard and terrified. After the Graves empire collapsed, debt collectors had swarmed their new luxury apartment, seizing everything because my parents had signed as third-party guarantors for several of Jade's luxury store credit lines. They were completely destitute, evicted from their apartment, and facing millions in debt. When Mom saw me standing in the room, she rushed forward like a starving dog, seeing meat, throwing herself at my feet and clutching my dress. Clara, my sweet daughter, save us. Mom wailed, weeping hysterically. The debt collectors took our home. We have nowhere to live. You have billions. Pay off our debt. Give us a few million to live on. Dad also dropped to his knees, his face pale and groveling. Clara, we're your parents. You can't leave us on the street. We were tricked by Jade. We didn't know she was a fraud. They completely abandoned Jade, blaming everything on her just to save themselves. Jade watched her beloved parents throw her under the bus, a bitter, broken laugh escaping her lips. I looked down at the two people kneeling at my feet, my expression colder than ice. Guarantors sign with their own hands, I said flatly. You enjoyed Jade's luxury, took her money, and encouraged her cruelty. Now you can enjoy her debt. I pulled my skirt out from Mom's grasp, turning my back on them. Clara, you cold-blooded monster. Mom screamed behind me, her voice turning from groveling to vicious cursing. We gave birth to you. God will punish you for being unfilial. Call the police if you think I owe you anything, I replied smoothly without stopping my stride. I walked out of the hospital room, listening to the echoing screams of my mother, the wails of my father, and the sobbing of my sister behind the heavy wooden doors. Epilogue, queen of her own destiny. 6 months later, the city's Eastern Gateway project was officially completed. A magnificent, 80-story glass and steel skyscraper stood at the heart of the financial district, gleaming under the bright afternoon sun. At the very top floor, inside a vast, luxurious executive suite overlooking the entire metropolis, I stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, holding a glass of champagne. Ethan, my general manager, walked in respectfully, holding a tablet. Ms. Clara, the board meeting for our international expansion has been set for tomorrow morning, Ethan reported with a warm smile. Also, the legal team confirmed that Silas and Arthur Graves have been sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. Jade Lee's trial concluded today. She was sentenced to 6 years in state prison. And my parents? I asked casually, taking a sip of champagne. They've been declared bankrupt, Ethan replied. They're currently working as sanitation workers in the suburban district to pay off their court fines. They tried to approach our building last week, but security barred them from entering. Good, I said softly. I turned back to look at the sprawling city below. In my past life, I was a helpless victim, betrayed by my own sister, abused by a sadistic monster, and thrown off a 22nd floor balcony to a cold, bloody death. In this life, I had reclaimed my destiny, built an unshakable business empire, and watched every single one of my abusers fall into the pits they had dug for themselves. I raised my champagne glass toward the bright blue sky, a radiant, victorious smile breaking across my face. I didn't need a prince. I didn't need a billionaire's dowry. I was the master of my own life, and my reign had only just begun.